Welcome to the first Intro to Warrior lecture or talk or whatever this is. I'm Baron Avi. I'm a Paragon Warrior from Fiorenai in Chattanooga.
I'm Baron A. Heralder Northsmasher. I'm a Paragon Warrior, currently playing out of the Ever Living Woods in Birmingham, Alabama.
I think today we were just going to go over basic equipment, right?
I was wanting to talk about the examples of warriors given from the ROP, but if we just want to talk about the equipment, I'm fine with that.
I had listed on the event equipment, so do
That's fine.
examples next time.
Yeah.
All right. So, we were talking about this a little earlier. I'm of the opinion that Warrior is probably, after Archer, the most equipment-dependent class. What do you think?
I agree. Even without armor, what you use really can depend on how you play. And if you choose to go into armor, then that really ups your equipment pricing.
It ups your pricing, but it also really ups the mileage you'll get out of Warrior.
I absolutely agree.
Because, I mean, if you look at Warrior's 6th level ability, Ancestral Armor, you can't use it at all without Worn Armor.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with the first thing every Warrior needs. Your Purple Sash. I think that one's kind of self-explanatory, but if you're not wearing your Purple Sash, you're a peasant.
True. Unless you're like me and you're colorblind, and now you're accidentally a bard.
Also true. The sash is the one thing that always sets your class apart and is a key required piece of equipment. After that, you're going to need a couple of enchantment strips as you get later in level.
Mm-hmm.
Warrior just happens to need white. And then we get into the fun stuff. The stuff that actually sets Warrior apart from everybody else. If you look into the rules of play on page 36, Warrior's listed equipment is all melee weapons, javelins, and up to large shields.
Which, for those who don't know, that means large shields and below. So large, medium, and small shields.
I think I know 2 people who use large shields.
Am I one of them?
Mm-hmm. You're the other babe. Seth has a large shield that's max large round hobbit door.
Those are always fun.
Not very good for much else, though. But no, as a warrior, you can carry any melee equipment you want. You want to cut in close, run dual daggers? Perfectly acceptable. Perfectly kosher. You want to stand back and hit people with a 20-foot war pole? Probably not safe, but technically legal.
And don't forget javelins, too.
Oh, yeah. Javelins are fun.
They are a lot of fun. Please forget javelins. No Samix. Samix actually made me a very nice javelin that I've been using a lot. And I really want to make some more.
I used to have one. I haven't run around with any for a while. I need to make more and make a good way to carry them.
Yeah, I just carry the one so I can throw it and swap to my sword real quick.
Yeah, giving yourself that 1 or 2 that you can toss, either to throw off a caster, just like make them move their feet and break an incantation, or when you're closing the gap to that initial engagement is incredibly nice.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody know the advantage javelins have versus all other ranged weapons? Now, they're stabbing only, but they are able to be used in melee. Means if you can close the gap without having thrown it, you're still armed. Honestly, that's probably the most ignored bit of kit for a warrior I've seen, giving yourself that ranged option.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Calgrave out of Sylvan Glade yesterday about javelins because he was having issues getting close against casters with spell balls and verbals. Which his other problem is that he's using a strap shield, which I'm a strong proponent of using punches.
I use a strap largely because I've got shoulder problems, and there are a lot of advantages to the punch, but I just can't wield it safely. And Samix just brought up a really interesting point in the chat about javelins. Since projectiles aren't able to be destroyed by pyro unless they're actively being wielded, the javelin is actually immune to being pyroed. So if you get hit with pyrotechnics, you've still got a javelin as long as it wasn't in your hand.
Although I can count on one hand, the number of times I've been the victim of pyrotechnics.
I don't think I've ever been victimized by pyrotechnics. I've used it a few times as a wizard.
If you or a loved one have been a victim of pyrotechnics, you may be entitled to financial compensation.
Monks don't have anything anyway. Oh, Monk is probably the weakest class in the game right now.
Absolutely. But let's not get sidetracked with that.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the big thing we need to talk about with weapons is carry multiple.
Oh my gosh, yes. Samix at ELW drilled this into my brain about me getting torn to bits with heat weapon because I would just carry my one sword and my shield. Now I carry an extra sword and a backup dagger, as well as the sword I have in my hand.
For me, I usually carry a spear and a sword or two. That way I've got a backup option and a backup option. But yeah, heat weapon is your bane. It's a first level wizard spell, and they will use it.
Oh yes, very overpowered spell. Yes, and druid, especially druid. Those dang druids.
And I leveled Druid entirely online, so I'm not as familiar with their class list as I should be.
I'm more familiar with being on the receiving end of their class lists.
Fair, our primary Druid here is an AON Druid, so
I'd like to talk about shields for a little bit. Is that all right?
absolutely.
So I started off playing with a shield I was gifted, which is a max medium shield. I recently used it again, and it's a strap, so it was a little awkward trying to get used to it again. But medium shields provide, especially for someone of my stature, I'm about 190, 200, and 5'11. With someone of my stature, it gives very adequate coverage of the upper body. Um, so much so I would just suffer from getting legged a lot. Then my next shield that I made is a small shield. It's a max small, 2 feet across, and I still use it to this day. It's a very old shield. I'm also looking at getting it replaced. But they're very handy, especially as a punch, in that they are able to be moved around. I can do dark sides, I can move it around, I can move it under my arm to block. I even found myself doing that involuntarily in single sword. I'll put my hand under my other arm to block things. And they're excellent for terraining. Now, terraining is the best thing you can do with a shield, in my opinion. What this allows you to do is that if there's an engulfing effect, like a lightning bolt or an ice ball or an entangle coming at you,
Or
you can,
Siege.
or siege, you can just hold your shield up. It has to remain perpendicular with the ground, of course, and you let go of it. Usually, I've gotten to where I can time it to just about before it hits, so it's still stationary in air due to its momentum, and it'll hits the shield, and it doesn't affect you. Then, unless it destroys the shield, like I think just Fireball does, then you can pick it right back up, and you're good to go. Now,
Fireball.
go
Fireball's
ahead.
not even engulfing.
Yeah, which is usually why. Although I've had it so drilled into my own head that I just tossed it almost every projectile that I can block it with. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite me anytime. And again, with small shields, you can also strap them. Like I know Laryl, another person that likes to play warrior, they have a strap shield they have from Dagger here that they will put on their upper arm when they're using a pole arm to get that block in.
Yeah, and that's something that can only be done with a small shield.
Right. And then large shields. We mentioned Seth Rural's giant hobbit door shield. I have it's 1 inch short on each side, or on both sides, the width and the length, tower shield, so it's 47 by 23. And it's really great for terraining stuff because it has a lot of inertia, it's a very large target, and it gives me a lot of coverage. I don't have to worry about getting legged. The hard part mostly is just getting around it to throw shots.
Yeah, the big downside to a giant shield like that is you're having to fight around your own portable wall.
Mm-hmm.
Even at my size, and I'm 6'4", a large shield is more of an encumbrance and a hindrance than I find it to be a benefit. That said, if I'm holding a doorway and I don't have to move a lot, that large shield is very nice.
Oh yes, it has amazing defensive capabilities. And while I'm thinking about small shields that are strapped, the Alexander's foot soldiers, called the foot companions, would use what we would call a small shield strapped to their forearm so they could hold a longer spear. Found a picture of a miniature which I will put in the chat.
And if you've ever seen the old King Arthur movie First Night, not that great of one, but worth giving you to watch at least once. Probably exactly once. They have a weird type of small shield that they strap to their left upper arm. And something like that is perfectly doable as well.
And for those of you listening later, Samix made a comment, you can also carry more than one shield for different ranges of combat, which is another great thing about Warrior, being able to carry all these things. I usually leave my things next to my spawn in case I have to swap out, which is usually between sword and shield and bringing one of my pole arms to bear if I need to start trying to push a line.
I actually find that pushing a line with sword and board can be really easy as well.
Oh yes, being able to like step forward wearing the armor and being able to get everyone else to follow in behind you is
Yeah.
very excellent. I was told an anecdote from it was our coronation. It was a spring coronation a few years ago. I was wearing my plate armor, using tower shield, and I just started pushing up one side of a bridge, and my whole team followed in behind me until I was able to punch through that one side, and they flowed in behind me. We were able to get across that bridge. Very fun uh, story to be told because I was just in the moment, not aware of what was going on around me.
Yeah, I was in a. It was during our first Kingdom push back in 2014. We were at a raid day down at Iron Springs and fighting across a little river. My buddy Nevin pinged somebody's weapon with a force bolt, breaking it, opened up a tiny gap, and because I was able to leap across the line with my armor on, that tiny gap, by being there, I opened it up wide.
Mm-hmm. The thing that covers shields. The other fun part about a tower shield is that they're so large that, or any large shield that's close to its maximum, it's so large that you can just put stuff on the back of it, which I've heard a lot about in theory. And I'm wanting to personally make one in practice, a utility tower shield, as I want to call it.
That would be neat to see. I know a couple of healers who used to write all their spells on their backs of their medium shields. Warrior, we don't have a whole lot of spells to worry about, so
I think that cover mostly covers equipment, or at least swords and weapons and shields. I know you mentioned you wanted to get to armor last, unless someone wants to talk about something else before we move on to. Oh yes, scab weapons. Um, for those that don't know, scab is a easy acronym to remember: shield crushing and armor breaking. Being able to get these on weapons, which I believe is long and above, can be a great way to get extra bonuses that
great.
normally.
It's greats
Yeah,
only.
great only.
Yeah,
Thought
it's greats
longs.
only.
Okay,
No,
my apologies. Um,
at least without magic.
yeah, like my big polearm, which I affectionately refer to as the pile driver, is a 9 3/4 foot bamboo cord weapon, mostly good for stabbing. That is scab due to its diameter, and getting in the line with that thing and just starting to go ham on the other line, you just start tearing through people.
Oh yeah, I've got a about a 6'3" war pole named Chad. That's also a scab pole, and it's a complete Chad. That was one great way to buff your offensive firepower, because while Warriors stuff is about keeping it alive, if you're not killing the other team, you're not winning. At least most of the time. So Scab gives you the ability to break through anything other than a warrior or knight class's armor in a single hit, and the ability to break down shields pretty fast. So what do you think? Are we ready to move on to armor?
I think so.
Armor is the big thing that sets warrior apart from everybody else. There are several classes that can use all melee weapons, and while warrior is the only one who can use shields, or large shields rather, you'll find that anything bigger than paladin and anti-paladin don't count, Samix. I think there are like 2 people in Winter's Edge who play either of those with any regularity. The knight only classes do throw the what we're saying off a little bit just because they are weird and they do have some overlap with warrior, but they are so rare and playable by such a small percentage of amp card that I consider them to be non-existent for the most part. Warrior is the only non-knight class that can actually wear more armor than the armor breaking tier. So what I mean by the armor breaking tier is if you get hit or an armor breaking strike with 3 or fewer points, your armor's gone. So anybody else at max armor value can only weather 1 shot before they start taking wounds. Warrior can weather 4 shots of armor breaking before they start taking wounds. And so you'll see that armor is really their key ability. It is the thing that sets them apart. Would you agree with that, Heralder?
Yes, being able to wear the lamellar, plate armor, and the what's the other one?
Brig?
Brigandines to their full potential really sets Warrior apart, and even from an aesthetic point of view, very much sets them apart on the field.
Yeah. And you can't even use your 6th level ability at all without worn armor.
Hmm.
Even if you're just wearing a Gambeson, that will give you some buff, and that will let you wear your ancestral armor. Now, one thing I've seen some newbie warriors do, and this is a good way to get into the class and see if it's something that you enjoy up to, I don't know, about third level or so, is get a druid buddy to give them bark skin or stone skin.
Hmm.
And those can both be mended via scavenge. So that's a way to kind of get a taste of the class. But if you're going to go serious with it and you're going to stick with the class, you do need to get armor. So, Heraller, what do you think the best armor for someone who's just getting into warrior to buy first is, or to make first?
Realistically, I would say chainmail would be, but the best armor, flat out, that gives the best from nothing to something bonus is Gambeson. Getting a Gambeson first is great. It goes with every armor and it provides excellent comfort and padding for any armor that you're going to put on top of it. But you see a lot of people just wearing chainmail. It's doable. I do it because I didn't fit my chainmail for the Gambeson I got because I got them at the same time. And it gets you to that three or 4 point margin without a terrible cost. Usually, see, I think the one I got was 250 $250, which is, again, it's a lot of money, but it's not as much as those brigandines, lamellars, and plate armors are going to run you.
Brig, lamb, and plate are definitely pricey, but I'm going to agree that chain is a good place to start. And if I were just getting into warrior now, I would totally buy a game first. Gambeson will give you full coverage all over your body because your armor is only as good as the weakest spot in it. If you've got a gap on the back of your knees, people are going to be aiming for those gaps.
Oh, yes, I call that funneling. They're going to be aiming for what they perceive as the weakest spot on your armor.
Yep. Now you can use that to your advantage. I know that people are going to be aiming for the backs of my knees, and so they're going to be doing weird contortions of their body to try to get there and opening themselves up for shots that they really shouldn't be. But if you wear a Gambeson, you can average out, and as long as you've got plate or 6 point armor over 90% of your body, you're going to hit that 6 point tier. I think you can get a Gambeson if you're willing to sew it yourself for about $10 in materials as well. They're not comfortable, but a Hobby Lobby or not Hobby Lobby, yeah, Harbor Freight shipping blanket, it won't breathe, but if you coupon it, you can get one for about $7. Get yourself some decent fabric from Walmart, Hobby Lobby, wherever, so that you don't have the rough inside of the shipping blanket against your skin. And you've got a Gambeson that gives you that coverage everywhere.
As someone who actually did use a moving quilt Gambeson for a couple years, they are good starters. Although I just had the rough on me. Though I would wear long sleeve garments underneath, so that I would not be having to get that abrasion on me. I don't know if they've changed in the time I've had one. The fabric is not a great, doesn't stand up to wear and tear too much. So covering it with another fabric would be good to increase its longevity without decreasing its effectiveness.
Like I said, I like to line them just for sake of comfort. Pretty much, that's a that is a place to start for armor. Now you're going to want to get more.
Once it's like a madness. Once you get some armor, you just have to keep going.
Yeah, I have an ex-girlfriend who told me I wasn't allowed to look at armor on field. I won't finish the rest or go into too much depth because you're more likely to spend money on armor than you are on anything else. So I named every piece of furniture in my house field. And there are resources for getting good used armor as well.
Oh yes.
The Armor Archive has a classified section where people are selling off their old kit pretty much all the time.
There's also, if you're on Facebook, the SCA Armor for Sale and other SCA boards where people regularly post starter armors or armor they're getting rid of.
Yeah, getting secondhand SCA stuff is a great way to get kit. But, bit of a truth bomb here. Heralder, what is the highest value you can get in terms of points for a chain shirt?
It is 6.
So if you've got a 4 point chain shirt, that's the max base value. You wear a heavy helm with it, you're sitting in 5 there, and there are 2 enchants that you can get that will buff your armor by a point. Imbue armor, which is okay. I wouldn't turn it down. And then there's Golem, which we'll go into detail about this in another class later on, I think.
Yeah, we'll go into detail about that later. but Golem has imbue armor baked into it.
Yep. And in my opinion, Golem's probably the best enchantment for warriors. But anything you can do to buff your armor is going to be good because your armor interacts really, really well with two of your class features: Scavenge at first level and Ancestral Armor at 6th. By sacking armor points or trading armor points for kills, you can just keep going and going and going. And the more armor you've got, the better chance you've got of being able to pull something like that off. But yeah, you can get up to 6 on the torso and 5 on your limbs from just a chain shirt, or just chain. And chain is nice because A, it's flexible, B, it will get you to the class cap for everything other than warrior. And it will get you really close for warrior. So, any questions so far? Good point, thank you. So, when I started wearing armor, I didn't start out in my full suit of armor. I started with a much lighter kit than what I wear now, and I trained up to it over the course of about 2 years. I started with I started in V7 with a padded tunic that I stitched a whole bunch of rings down to, and tacked on bits and pieces and replaced stuff as time went on, and worked up from that about probably 15-pound suit up to my current 6 points everywhere kit. Now, if you are a smaller person than me and you don't have the physical ability to wear something like that, there are other options. Aluminum is a great option for bringing your kit weight down. You can get aluminum. There's an option for aluminum lamb that you can do via Lowe's that it'll run you a little bit, but picking up mending plates and lacing them together with paracord will get you a decent suit for about 20 pounds. And that's a lot easier to run around in than what I wear. Geralder, thoughts?
I agree. I didn't start. We were talking about where you started in conditioning. I didn't start in the heavy plate either. I started with my moving quilt Gambeson, and then I got Cuirass, and then I just started building up from there over the course of several years. Remember the first time I wore out my Cuirass to park, I actually stopped several times during the battle game, just down on all fours, just breathing, because I wasn't used to it.
We were at a Kingdom event, Principality event, down in, is it South Carolina, where Eastwind is?
That is South Carolina.
We were down in South Carolina in the heat, in the humidity, and another team decided that it was a good idea to camp the water fountains. So not only was I running around in my kit in that weather, I wasn't able to hydrate properly. And when you are in armor, hydration is absolutely key.
Yes, I was going to start saying that too. Hydrating beforehand, making sure you have water and electrolytes. So Gatorade, pickles, something salty,
Popcorn.
popcorn.
All right, we've got Craig again. I'm not sure where we lost him, so
All right.
hopefully we didn't lose too much of the recording.
Looks like it wasn't too long ago. Same minute. Oh yes. In addition to making sure you have water, drinking water throughout the day when you're between fights or even during battles if you need it. Actually, I'm going to talk about this a little more. And also, the most important thing is knowing your limit when you need to sit down. No one will ever fault you for that, and if they are, they're the person with a problem. If you need to go sit down, take your armor off, invent and cool down, you absolutely should do it, and you need to do it. This game is not worth injuring yourself over. Heat
Injuries are
not a
probably
joke.
the second most common injury I see in Amtgard after sprained ankles, and they are not fun.
Yes.
I pushed myself a little too hard at an event once, and I didn't feel good afterwards for about 2 or 3 days.
Yeah. One of our first events last year we were able to have. I passed out after I almost passed out after the first game due to improper hydration. I didn't have enough electrolytes. Plenty of water, not enough electrolytes.
I was at an event for another
Going on.
game down in Florida, running around in my kit. Actually running around in what's my barbarian kit in Amtgard, but I went through over the course of Saturday something like 4.5 gallons of water. I was still dehydrated at the end of the day.
Always make sure you have enough water. And Samix stated commented in the chat, quality, well-fitting footwear since armor will increase your weight and your momentum. This is absolute must.
I thoroughly recommend something with a pair of high tops on it, because you're going to need ankle support. And you don't want your armor riding down onto your foot.
Yes, that is
Yeah,
very
armor bite
uncomfortable.
is real. It is not fun.
And also making sure what you get has good traction on it. Very very helpful so that you don't trip over rough terrain or anything like that. I personally have a pair of surplus army boots that have been. I didn't even have to put insoles or anything in them. They're just, I guess they're just meant for the. I guess they're obviously meant for this kind of stuff, and I've been wearing them for my armor ever since, and they're just great. My feet don't hurt, and I don't have any
I use
zero
the exact
complaints
same
about them.
thing, only I got them not surplus. Non-recoverable property. You don't have to turn it back in. But yeah, good high boots or high ankled boots. And like Samix says in the chat, your weight and your momentum are way up. I'm a heavy guy already. I charge a line normally. People are, well, there's a lot of energy going. I tack on over 80 pounds of steel. That's even more. That's one of those, I have to be able to stop and stop well because so I have to have good shoes.
And while on the subject of moving while you're in your plate, be aware of how you move and how much extra space you're going to need for stopping, starting, stepping, moving your arms around, all of that, so that you avoid
Yeah, because you are
any
absolutely
collisions with other
responsible
players.
for your own actions and safety of other people. That said, Warrior is a great bowling ball, largely because of the armor. About 6 months ago was the first time I'd played Warrior again in a while. We were down at Iron Springs, and my team was losing pretty badly at Ding the Bell. So I decided the correct course of action was to put on my strap shield, charge the line, and just get in there before they could hit me too many times. Worked in a couple of rounds, and we did end up losing eventually, but took us from trailing 2-0 to a 3-2 loss. So really, that's about all I've got for today. What about you, Geralder?
That's everything I've got for this lesson.
Do we have any questions, or? All right, well, take it
Yeah,
as a no.
taking that up. Well, thanks everyone
Thank
for
you for
coming.
joining us.
We're glad to have you. Thank you for listening.
And on that note, I'm going to stop the recording.